Diamond B Sports presents from the National Hot Rod Association Championship Drag Racing, the 1988 Budweiser Springnationals. Speeds in excess of 285 miles per hour, covering the quarter-mile distance in less than 5 seconds. Drag racing from the NHRA. 16 times a year across the United States and Canada, professional drag racers gather to battle in the $1 Million Winston Championship Series. The first third of that season is completed with the 5th event, the 13th annual Cajun Nationals at State Capitol Dragway, played to a track jammed with enthusiastic race fans. They were treated to some spectacular action as 26-year-old Darrell Gwynn was trying for his 2nd win in a row, having previously taken the inaugural Mid-South Nationals title. Gwynn was matched with Joe Amato, himself making his 4th final round appearance in 5 races. Gwynn dominated the race, winning at 5.16 seconds elapsed time at over 273 miles an hour. In the finals of Pro Stock, Bruce Allen had to use the superior power of his Chevy Beretta to drive down the surprising Morris Johnson Jr. Johnson had a big advantage at the starting line, but Allen was able to come from behind with a speed of over 187 miles an hour at 7.44 seconds. Victory is sweet whenever it comes, and for 49-year-old Bruce Larson, it took over 20 years of trying before he won his first NHRA funny car title. Larson raced the reigning and 3-time Winston champion Kenny Bernstein in the Cajun Nationals finals and pulled off a stunning upset in one of the closest races of the year. Larson used his quicker start off the line to overcome the better time turned by Bernstein. The focus on the Winston drag racing scene now shifts to National Trail Raceway just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and welcome to the 24th annual running of the NHRA Spring Nationals. And for the 24th year in a row, the Springs are treating the fans to all the racing drama and action that they could hope for. With more on that story, here's my co-commentator and good friend, Steve Evans.
David, everywhere we go this year, it's the same beautiful scene. Grandstands just packed with people. Fans who cheer louder than any I've ever heard at any motorsports event. And the pits, well, they're just packed with people crowded around their favorite race cars. And there's a lot of reasons, I'm sure, for the popularity of NHRA Championship drag racing. But this season, one stands out, and that's how even the competition is. Consider, there have been 5 races and 5 different funny car winners. 4 different Pro Stock drivers have found their way to the winner's circle, and in top fuel, 3 drivers have won. There is just not a dominant team so far. And of course, drag racing is so famous for very tight finishes. And we saw some earlier today when the pros ran their first round. In funny car, Ed the Ace McCullough in the far lane just barely nipped Johnny West right at the finish line. Now, Gene Snow made the big statement in round 1 of Top Fuel. He asserted himself to an all-time National Trail Top Fuel record, 5.21 seconds. When I talked to him, he seemed a bit surprised by that.
I'm excited as usual. This doggone car just keeps showing us good and better times all the time. We're really pleased.
With the high gear car, do you feel that? Did you know you're in quicker than anyone's ever gone there?
Got the tires loose off the line a little bit, and I said, well, there goes a little bit of the ET, but it pulled real good in the middle, and it brought it back.
And for those of you who might be asking, does Diamond P have that trick onboard camera? You bet we do. It's on Eddie Hill's car, and it already rode to victory in round number 1. David?
Thank you, Steve, and we really do love that in-car camera shot, as does the 3rd member of our broadcast team. He is a 3-time Top Fuel World Champion. He's been looking at that view for 30-some years, Don Garlitz. This is a tricky racetrack today, Don. How are the racers going to compensate?
Well, this is definitely going to be a situation where the crews and the crew chiefs are going to have to make the right decisions, because the drivers are just not going to be able to completely handle this from the cockpit. These cars are going to have to be set properly before they ever get to the line, Dave.
Don, we sit here and talk about a tricky racetrack. Actually, what are we referring to?
In this particular situation, Dave, This track changes from run to run. You can make a good run in a lane one time and come back and smoke the tires. And that is driving these crews crazy.
Well, Don, what physically can they do to stop the car from smoking the tires?
It's up to the crews to make the adjustments, I think, basically to the gear ratios and to the clutch settings. If they don't get that right, they're going to smoke the tires here.
Can they detune the motor, take horsepower out of it?
It's hard to detune motors, and your competitors are running 280 miles an hour in 520.
On the racetrack now, our competitors in the second round of competition. We find Darrell Gwynn out of Miami, Florida, the hottest driver on the circuit today, racing against Dennis Forcell in his rookie season as a top fuel driver. Both Gwynn and Forcell came up from the alcohol dragster ranks, a tremendous amount of experience for both drivers.
I think, Dave, that coming up through the alcohol ranks is going to help these guys on this track.
And it's a good start for both cars. No tire smoke. And Darrell Gwynn advances into the semifinals. His elapsed time, 5:35, 270 miles an hour. Don, that's off pace from his qualifying effort.
Yes, it is. It indicates, Dave, that he was perhaps pulling on that brake at the start to keep those tires from breaking loose. And Darrell has had a lot of experience in that department.
Here's Gary Ormsby. Ormsby racing against Joe Amato. Amato is currently leading the Winston Championship points chase and is one of the most feared drivers here today.
Especially being that he has top speed of the meet at over 280 miles an hour, which indicates the horsepower that Tim Richards is generating for that team.
Tim Richards, of course, the crew chief on Joe Amato's race car. Amato has been in the finals 4 times thus far this season, has yet to win a race. Gary Ormsby was in the final round of last season's Spring Nationals, losing to Dick LaHaye, who himself lost to Eddie Hill in the first round of racing today. Don, with the horsepower generated by Joe Amato at speeds over 280 miles an hour, could that not present problems?
It'll present a problem unless Richards has got the clutch set properly.
Both cars coming into the staging beams. And Amato up in smoke. Gary Ormsby advances to the semifinal round. His elapsed time somewhat slower than the times we've been seeing today, 5.43 seconds. But the win counts for Ormsby as he goes into the semifinal round of 4. Don, as we look again, what happened to Amato?
I think this situation is just what we were talking about. He didn't change anything, but the track did not hold the car this time.
A tough break for Amato. Let's go to the far end of the racetrack and Steve Evans.
Well, Gary Ormsby had his own cheering section down here. It was Darrell Gwynn's crew. And, Gary, they loved it that you put Joe Amato out of this thing early.
Well, we love it, too. We like to beat everybody, but we especially like to beat Joe. I think he's got a little thing about this green car.
Well, you know, running in the 540s as you did, you're going to give up lane choice in the next round to Darrell.
Well, Steve, we had to soften it up. We were scared to get down the lane. I think it'll run a little better, and if the lane will hold up, it'll take some more next time.
Okay, Gary Ormsby goes to the semifinals. The sound you hear in the background is a helicopter.
Steve, there's lots of helicopters here today, including ours, giving us this great shot of the 1988 NHRA Spring Nationals being brought to you by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. And by Ford. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. We're waiting along with Eddie Hill for the next race in Top Fuel Eliminator. Coming up next at the NHRA Spring Nationals. We're back at the NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals. We're in round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator, and this is the car of Eddie Hill. Our in-car camera sitting right behind Eddie's right shoulder as we take a ride on the burnout. Don, Eddie has been the talk of drag racing this season.
He certainly has with that 499 ET and that 288 mile an hour speed. He is the hottest thing on the circuit as far as performance goes.
Racing against Hill is the 3-time Winston champion Shirley Muldowney. She has 5 event wins here at the Spring Nationals. Hill has won twice on the national event circuit this season. And of course, that 499 was recorded at the Texas Motorplex. But he has had problems regaining that level of performance since that time. We watch as Hill brings his machine into the staging beams. He is in the far lane of the racetrack. Shirley in the near lane. And Shirley Muldowney goes up in smoke. Ursi Hill watching as her husband Eddie crosses the finish line and advances to the semifinals. His time relatively slow, 5.47 seconds at only 269 miles an hour. Is that indicating problems, Don?
Well, it indicates that they're scared of this track. They're afraid they're going to smoke the tires, and so they backpedal the car. You know, they don't give it full throttle. And look, there's Shirley smoking them.
Don, as we saw, Shirley left the starting line first, indicating she really hammered the throttle, maybe too much so. She smoked the tires in the near lane. The race before, we saw Joe Amato smoke the tires in the far lane. That loss of traction has got to be confusing to our next two drivers, Dan Pastorini and Gene Snow.
You can bet that both of them are thinking about this, thinking perhaps that their lane is not going to hold the power that they're getting ready to generate.
Dan Pastorini getting ready to do his burnout. The burnout is designed to heat the tires up to optimum operating temperatures, provide as much traction as possible. And Snow has problems on his burnout. He barely smoked the tires. He may be confronted with a traction problem that he cannot solve. In the meantime, let's go to Steve.
Well, Eddie Hill arrives down here trailing engine smoke in 5.47 seconds. Not a number you wanted to hear.
No, not really. I laid on the brake real hard. That's the first time I ever tried it, time trial or whatever. And I know it slowed the car down, but we won the lap, didn't we?
Oh, indeed.
That's the main thing we want to do. I did want lane choice, too, but looks like we're in big trouble there, huh?
Don, it looks like Eddie Hill is catching on to some of the driving techniques that have been around for quite some time.
Yeah, we've been holding on the brake for a couple of years, Dave, to maintain traction.
Dan Pastorini in the second round of racing here, his best appearance thus far this season. That's right, Pastorini, the former NFL quarterback. Gene Snow driving a rather unique vehicle. He does not have a transmission, a direct drive only with a multi-stage clutch. But Don, he's got to be concerned about that poor burnout.
He certainly has, because his crew has given him the signal that he did not smoke the tires. And on this particular track, that is going to be very critical. If you don't get those tires hot enough, Dave, you're going to smoke them.
Of course, smoke them means the ultimate in burning rubber, the tires losing traction, and that is a sure way of losing the race. Dan Pastorini went up in smoke, but Snow is glued to the ground. Look at the elapsed time, 5.26 seconds. His speed, 254 miles an hour. That elapsed time will give Gene Snow the right to select the racing lane over Eddie Hill. The lane choice determined by the quicker elapsed time set in the previous round. Darrell Gwynn races Gary Ormsby in the other half of the semis. Gwynn having the lane choice.
And Dave, I can tell you that lane choice is going to be critical at Columbus this year.
Not only to the top fuel dragsters, but to all of our race cars. Now we are into Pro Stock Eliminator, the semifinal round. Butch Leal from Blacklick, Ohio, a suburb of Columbus, is in the far lane. Bruce Allen in the near lane. Allen, the driver of the Chevy Beretta out of Arlington, Texas, has won 2 events this season, the recent Cajun Nationals and the Gator Nationals. In the second round of racing here today, he was matched against Kenny Delco from Center Reach, New York. As the two cars were several hundred feet away from the finish line, Kenny Delco in the far lane actually held a slim lead. But then the power of the Chevrolet prevailed, and Bruce Allen won the race by about a fender length. That earned him the right to race against last year's runner-up, Butch Leal, who in the second round was pitted against Tony Christian, the winner of the Mid-South Nationals earlier this season. Again, picking up the race just a few hundred feet from the finish line, Leal in the far lane in a Pontiac, Christian in the near lane in the Chevy Beretta, and the Pontiac prevailed. Again, about a fender length separating the two. So now Leal is in the far lane of the racetrack, and Bruce Allen in the near lane in the semifinals of Pro Stock Eliminator. Just by inches, Bruce Allen wins the race. Neither crew knows who won, but the electronic judge scored it. Bruce Allen, 7.53 seconds, as Butch Leal apparently had some problems. A close race, Don.
Oh, that Butch Leal gets off the line, doesn't he, Dave? Look at that. He's out there in front of Bruce Allen, and I'll bet you at this point, Bruce Allen saying, am I ever going to catch this guy? And they go down the racetrack, and all of a sudden, something goes wrong with Leo's car, and Bruce Allen just nips him.
Let's go to Steve.
Anyone who follows pro stock racing closely could have almost written that scenario. It was Leal off the mark by a bit in the powerful rear end Morrison car, Bruce Allen from behind. Bruce, nice pass.
Yeah, we were a little lucky there. Butch broke his engine or broke something. He was definitely ahead of me. I was pulling on him, but I don't think I'd have caught him. He's tough as always, and I'm just glad we won.
Well, I'm sure the whole team is. We'll see you in the final.
Thank you.
Don, that was a big break for Bruce Allen.
You bet. It puts him in the finals.
Bob Glidden coming out of the burnout area. He's driving a Ford. It is the Ford versus Chevy matchup that the fans love, as Joe Lapone will be his competition. Glidden in the far lane of the racetrack has had problems earlier this season, but at this event, he seems to have regained the performance level that carried him to 8 Winston Championship titles. The entire Glidden family, based in Whiteland, Indiana, is involved in the operation of this race car, which in the second round of competition was matched against Nick Nicolas from Jackson Heights, New York. Nicolas drives a Pontiac Firebird and was watching Bob Glidden as he disappeared down the racetrack to an extensive margin of victory that earned him the right to come into the semifinals to race against Joe Lapone, who in the second round of competition raced against Jerry Ekman of Ventura, California, who was in the far lane of the racetrack. Watch closely as the two cars came into the staging beams. Jerry Ekman had problems. Just as he lit the staging light, the engine let go. You see the sparks and the smoke, and that gave a single run to Joe Lapone to advance him into the semifinals to race against the flying Ford of Bob Glidden. Lots of RPMs. And once again, Bob Glidden with a substantial margin of victory runs a great 7.46 seconds at 186 miles an hour. That sets up the finals. It will be Bob Glidden against Bruce Allen, with Glidden and his Ford having the choice of lanes. Back in the Darrell Gwynn pit area, they're hard at work, Don.
Yes, the Gwynn pit crew takes the engine completely apart each time, Dave. Some of the crews don't do this, but I think it's smarter to take the engine apart and make sure of what you've got.
It certainly paid off this season for Darrell Gwynn. Let's go to Steve with Bob Glidden.
Okay, what happens now in the pits? The nitro cars, they take them all apart. What do you and Etta do?
Well, we've had the clutch out, everything apart every run here, and we'll do it again before the final. We've been going a little softer, and we're going to have to wait and see what the weather does. If it cools off, we might take a little bit of a chance. We won't take much. We're going to keep it on the safe side.
Okay, see you in the final round.
The winningest driver ever in NHRA competition, Bob Glidden, will be racing Bruce Allen in the finals of Pro Stock. That comes up a bit later at the NHRA Springnationals. Back at the NHRA Budweiser Springnationals at National Trail Raceway near Columbus, Ohio. The crew of Eddie Hill's top fuel dragster, led by Fuzzy Carter, the crew chief, hard at work getting that racing car ready for the semifinals. Right now on the starting line, you can hear in the background the engines coming to life for round number 2 of funny car competition. This is the 4-time Winston champion, Don Prudhomme, racing against Mike Dunn, a second-generation drag racer, following in the footsteps of his father, Jim Dunn. Mike Dunn has the unique distinction of being the only funny car driver over 280 miles an hour. He holds the record and top speed of this race. Don Prudhomme has won 35 national event titles in his long career, and in the first round of racing was matched against the Chevrolet Beretta driven by Ron Dudley from Tulsa, Oklahoma. As they left the starting line, Dudley in the right-hand lane of the racetrack, as we view from the far end, was in serious trouble. A huge engine explosion and resulting fire.
He had a huge fire, and the heat just got intense in the car. Look at, he's steering it, trying to bring the speed of the vehicle down by swerving it, getting over closer to the guardrail, finally actually hitting the guardrail to stop the car.
Don, that car was on fire from the inside out. The fiberglass was burning on the inside. All 4 tires were on fire. Dudley had difficulty seeing where he was going, not only because of the fire, but the absolute intense black smoke that billowed out. You see in the background that red, white, and blue truck beginning to roll. That is the NHRA Safety Safari, and they were on the scene 4 seconds after Ron Dudley came to a stop. Take a close look at this Safety Safari crew in action. Watch the man in the center of your screen in the fire suit. That is Jerry Grice of Shreveport, Louisiana. He dove inside the car trying to reach Dudley in the midst of all that flame and smoke, and then tried to rip the body off with his hands. And as a result of the safety crew's efforts, Dudley was extricated from the car, airlifted to a Columbus hospital where he is in serious but stable condition. A lucky man.
Worst possible scenario I've ever seen, Dave. The Safety Safari's efforts were superb.
You bet they were, Don. This is round number 2 now of Funny Car Eliminator. Mike Dunn in the far lane, and Prudhomme smokes the tires, and it's an easy win for Mike Dunn. Don, you know that Safety Safari crew paid a price for getting to Ron Dudley. Jerry Grice was hospitalized with severe smoke inhalation and a wrenched shoulder. Randy Robbins hospitalized with burns about the hands. Butch Orr burned on the arms, and Ronnie Davis, NHRA's EMT, was burned as he was resuscitating Ron Dudley.
They are the hidden heroes of our sport, Dave, and every racer in the pits owes a debt of gratitude to those men.
That's the NHRA Safety Safari. On the starting line, the continuation of round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator. In the far lane of the racetrack, it is Kenny Bernstein. In the near lane of the track, in the Oldsmobile, is Dale Palde. Bernstein is the reigning Winston champion. In fact, he has won that title for 3 consecutive years. In the first round, Bernstein defeated last year's Springnationals runner-up, Jim Head from Columbus. Dale Palde in the first round defeated the current Winston points leader, Mark Oswald. Oswald, driving the Candies and Hughes car based out of Houma, Louisiana, had his share of problems. He was in the far lane of the racetrack. Dale Palde was in the near lane. Oswald could have easily defeated Palde on this run, but for one problem. As he left the line, he lost control, crossed over the center line of the racetrack, which disqualified him and made Palde the winner.
Well, I'm sure Mark Oswald's first question is, did I or didn't I? You did. The ruling just came down. You've crossed the center line, and of course you know the rules automatically.
I knew it was close. There just wasn't any traction.
Just fighting for control?
Yeah, just trying to stay ahead of him. You know, you can't see the other car. You got to keep trying.
And that tightens up that Winston points chase. Oswald was the leader. The number 2 car is Kenny Bernstein. And Palde smokes the tires. Bernstein has real problems holding that car in his lane of the track. Bernstein, 5.73 seconds. Don, that was quite a driving job.
Yes, it was. Very seldom do you see cars smoke the tires that hard, that far down the track. Bernstein definitely had his hands full.
This is John A. Martin, a San Dimas-based California racing team that this season is making more appearances on the National Event Tour than any time previously. Against him is the most recent winner on the NHRA National Event Trail, Bruce Larson, who drove his Oldsmobile to victory at the Cajun Nationals in Baton Rouge. Steve?
What you're seeing here is a very wary but highly accomplished race car driver. When a funny car smokes the tires that far down the race course, Kenny, you've got your hands full. Great job.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a handful. That's the worst. I don't like that at all. I don't think any driver does like that type of a feel, but yeah, you just got to try to get there, and it wasn't over my head yet, but it was dadgum close.
You can see the concern etched on the face of Kenny Bernstein about how to keep that car under control as he advances into the semifinals. Here in the near lane of the track is John Martin. In his first round race, he defeated Jerry Caminito. His competition is Bruce Larson, who previously defeated Chuck Etchels. Don, at this point, these drivers have got to be totally confused about the racetrack.
They don't know whether it's slick on the starting line, slick on the top end, which lane is good, which lane is bad. It's just an absolute crapshoot.
Both drivers concentrating intently on the start. And a little bit of loss of traction for John Martin. And a clean run for Bruce Larson. Look at the time, 5.50. That surprise you, Don Garlits?
Well, I don't know, not too much. He's been very consistent today. He could be in the hunt.
In Gene Snow's pit area, the crew disassembling the engine, replacing the parts needed, and just checking everything to make sure it is ready for the semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator. That'll be coming up shortly at the NHRA Spring Nationals. Back at the NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals, along with Steve Evans and Don Garlits, I'm Dave McClellan, and over 93,000 fans have attended this 24th annual running of the Spring Nationals, and they have been treated to some great excitement. Now it's the last race in round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator. Ed McCulloch will be in the near lane of the racetrack, while John Force will occupy the far lane. By virtue of a quicker ET, Force had the choice of lanes. Don, do you agree with his selection?
Yes, I do. I think the racers are just going by who has made the most amount of good runs in what lane.
John Force from Yorba Linda, California, has one national event title to his credit, while Ed McCulloch has won 10, including this year's Southern Nationals Championship.
And Dave, if there's anyone that can figure out this near lane, it's Ed McCulloch and crew chief Bernie Federley. They're tops in the business.
Well, Don, the head wrench on John Force's car is no slouch. That's Austin Coyle.
He's got a couple of championships under his belt, and he knows what he's doing. In fact, he's got some devices on that car that will really help at this track.
Don, the dashboard of that car looks like the instrument panel of an airliner. And it paid off this round for John Force as he defeated Ed McCulloch. A run of 5.61 seconds at a speed of over 262 miles an hour earned John Force the right to race against Kenny Bernstein in the semifinals. And most importantly for Force, that 5.61 second elapsed time gave him the choice of lanes over Bernstein. The other pairing in the semifinal round finds Bruce Larson against Mike Dunn, and that brilliant 5.50 gives Larson the lane choice. Steve?
Well, John Force, you had to take the reins on this Oldsmobile. It wanted to have its own way with you.
Spend all that money for a ride like that. That makes it all worthwhile. Scary, though.
You want some good news?
Yeah.
Lane choice with a 561 over Bernstein.
You need that over Bernstein. I want to say something. A lot of people are back in this race car, and she loses a lot. We know that. She runs quick, and she loses. Me and Coyle, we fight and wrestle weekly. But I tell you something. People don't know what it takes to be champion. We may lose the next one. We may not. But right now, what we've been trying for the last month is finally starting to work. Even starting to worry Coyle.
I have a feeling it's in the clutch department.
A whole bunch of places. Thank you.
Don, I always like listening to that man, but I never really know what he's saying.
They're on to something, Dave.
They must be, because John Force is in the semifinals. Here is Jerry Gwynn. He is a world champion in his own right in Super Comp Eliminator years gone by. Most importantly, he is the dad of Darrell Gwynn and the crew chief on this race car. This is the semifinal round of racing in Top Fuel Eliminator. Gwynn has selected the far lane of the track. Gary Ormsby is in the near lane.
I guess the big question now is the crew chief for Ormsby's car, Lee Beard, giving him enough power to get by Gwynn and not smoke the tires?
Don, as we have seen so many times before, the problem is not generating the horsepower. The problem is putting it to the ground.
Exactly.
And Gary Ormsby does not. Darrell Gwynn goes through with an elapsed time of 5.33 seconds at 273 miles an hour. Not as quick as he has run earlier today.
An indication that he's still leaning hard on that brake, Dave.
As we talked about earlier, Gwynn riding the brakes to keep the tires from losing traction. You're riding with Eddie Hill as he gets set to do his burnout. Holding it straight down track, Eddie Hill smokes those huge 17-inch wide tires. Now it's Gene Snow's turn, and he really does a hard burnout. Let's go to Steve with Darrell Gwynn.
What is the technique of holding the brake? How hard do you hold it? How do you know when to let it go?
Well, it all depends on what it does on the dry burnout, how hard it smokes the tires, how violent it was, and they kind of give me all kinds of hand signals as how far to hold it, how long to hold it, how hard to...
That run, where did you let go?
I let off about 3/4 of a second into the run.
The human clock?
You got it.
Darrell Gwynn, very confident in his ability to time the release of that brake handle to allow the car to pull ahead and cross the finish line first. It seems to be paying off. He's in the finals and will race one of these two drivers. Will it be Gene Snow or Eddie Hill? Don, who do you pick?
Well, you know, Gene's got the good lane, but Eddie Hill's got the good car. You're really putting me on the spot here. I think I'm going to go with Hill. I'm going to say he's going to come through.
You're riding with Eddie Hill. The car leaves hard. He reaches for the brake. Something goes wrong, and look at Snow disappear. And look at the elapsed time for Gene Snow. 5.21 seconds at 256 miles an hour. Don, that's a new track record.
He certainly has got that clutch figured out with that high gear car, and that's what it's going to take to figure out these two lanes.
These are the two concrete lanes that have been causing such consternation for the drivers, and that's our final round pairing in Top Fuel. It will be Darrell Gwynn against Gene Snow, with Snow having the lane choice. In the pit area, Tim Richards, the crew chief on Joe Amato's car, also helps on the tuning for Bruce Larson. They're talking about possible changes for Larson as they get ready for the semifinals. Back at the NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals, there's lots of drama building. Let's go to Steve.
There is a panic situation right now in the Gene Snow pit area. The engine went through its normal maintenance. Gene was happy. The crew was smiling, chatting with each other. They got the engine back together, went to turn it over to adjust the valves, and it wouldn't budge. It was frozen up. They took it apart. A lot of help showed up, talented help from other crews to try to find the problem. They took the rod bearings off. They took everything apart. Couldn't find anything responsible for binding the engine up. They have finally found it. It's at the very front of the engine. It's a bearing in the camshaft idler mechanism, and that is a very delicate thing that may require removing the camshaft, and some very sophisticated work maybe have to be done on this car. There's lots of help here, but it really everyone has to wonder if they can get this done in time to be in the lanes to face Darrell Gwynn for all the money and the Spring Nationals title.
Don, they're under a considerable amount of time pressure. Can they make it?
I'll tell you, it's going to be really close, Dave. I personally don't think so.
Just another facet of the excitement at this 24th annual Spring Nationals, one of the biggest events of the year. The total purse, nearly $800,000. 650 cars entered competition here 3 days ago. In addition to our 3 professional categories of Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock, sportsman competition was conducted earlier today. In the finals of Top Alcohol Funny Car, the world champion Pat Austin in the near lane, Tommy Johnson Jr. in the far lane. Johnson used his driving ability to get to the finish line first and win his first ever NHRA National Event title. The sportsman champions at this Spring Nationals included Tommy Johnson Jr. as the Alcohol Funny Car Kingpin. Top Alcohol Dragster was won by Mike Koski. Competition Eliminator, Rick Horde. The Superstock champion, Ron Terrell. Wes Leopold Sr. won Stock Eliminator. Super Gas champ was Martin Crone. Super Comp, Richard Willard. The Pro Stock Motorcycle champ, David Schultz. And the Super Street winner at the Spring Nationals, Donald Trable. Our congratulations to all the Sportsman Eliminator champions. Now it is time for the semifinals of Funny Car Eliminator. These are the engines using the nitromethane fuel for power and capable of speeds up to 280 miles an hour. Austin Coyle, the crew chief for John Force, directing Force in his Oldsmobile into the proper spot on the racetrack. Dale Armstrong, the crew chief for Kenny Bernstein, doing the same in the near lane. Don, what's your selection?
I'm going to go with Force because Bernstein is in the near lane and has been given trouble.
Bernstein's got the advantage, but he runs into handling problems. And John Force, for the 15th time in his career, goes into the final round with a 5.57 second elapsed time. His speed over 265 miles an hour.
Been been a long time since you've seen Bernstein go out like that, not being able to go all the way to the end.
Don, that's just an example of the difficulties of mastering this racetrack. Our final pair in this semifinal round of racing finds Mike Dunn in the near lane, as Bruce Larson had the choice of lanes and selected the far lane of the racetrack. In the previous round, he had an elapsed time of 5.50. What's Larson doing different than the other drivers?
I think he's running his car a little on the soft side, just enough to get down the racetrack, but not enough to spin the tires.
Why doesn't everybody do that?
Because you take a definite chance, Dave. There's been good runs made in both lanes, so if you detune your car, you could get outrun.
Bruce Larson, selecting the far lane of the racetrack, has the quick time of eliminations thus far. Let's go to Steve.
Well, Kenny Bernstein and crew gave that near lane a very intelligent shot. Kenny appeared to get off the throttle when the car just got unmanageable. John Force, a final round. You're headed there with 5:57.
57. It's about time. We've as you know, the Bud car, the red cars beat us up so many times, and it hurts. It hurts after a race to, in all sincerity, lay in bed sick, and it hurts. And this time, don't care what happens in the final. We don't have to go to bed hurting or disbelieving in this team. We've all done well.
Now, there's a guy on the starting line named Bruce Larson that could take lane choice away from you.
Coyle made a statement. He drove by Larson today. He said, the guy makes me just sick. Where did he come from? Out of nowhere. And it's good to see a competitor come out, and Richards and them guys are great, and the help that they're giving him. He's tough. He scares me, but let me tell you something. Paisano really scares me because he goes for the throat.
The reason they're afraid of Mike Dunn in Joe Pisano's car is because that car's capable of over 280 miles an hour.
And that means lots of horsepower, Dave, and if he ever hooks it up, he's out of there big time.
A green light start, and Dunn smokes the tires. Bruce Larson into the final round for the second race in a row, and the elapsed time shows he has the choice of lanes. 5.54 seconds for Larson. His speed over 254 miles an hour, as Larson will race against John Force in the funny car final. Larson, by 0.03 of a second, getting the all-important choice of lanes. In Gene Snow's pit area, the work continues, but they're a long ways from getting that racing engine back together. Let's go down track to Steve Evans.
It's been a long time since we've had an imbalance in lanes like we're seeing today. So, Bruce, not only were you racing Mike Dunn, you were racing the clock, and you beat both of them. You have lane choice. 5:54 to John's 57.
And I even shut off early.
Is that how early?
I thought I shut off too early. You know, it was one of those brain fade things. I was trying to save the car, but I needed to.
All those years of having to save the parts and pieces. It's hard to get over that sort of thing.
Yeah, it almost used me up.
Okay, we'll see you in the final.
Thanks a lot.
The finalists in Pro Stock resting easily. Bob and Etta Glidden using the Ford for a pack stop, while Bruce Allen does the same with his Chevy Beretta. We'll be seeing that race in just a moment at the NHRA Spring Nationals. We're back at the 24th Annual NHRA Spring Nationals. For his thoughts on one of our final round races, let's go to Don Garland.
As the shadows start to get long here at Columbus for the NHRA Spring Nationals, we've had one exciting day in funny car racing. And it's been a tricky deal. That left lane has really been tough. But as we go into this final, I think we're going to see one of the best races of the day. We've got John Force and Bruce Larson. Now, Force has got that near lane, which has been given trouble all day long. But he has also got that computerized brake system on his car that Austin Coyle developed, and he will be able to get through that tricky condition on the starting line. But it's going to take just a little bit of ET off of John's car. Bruce Larson is a little quicker going into this round, and he has lane choice. So just by the slimmest of margins, I'm going to give the call to Bruce Larson.
We'll find out in a few moments whether Don Garland's is right. But first, it's the finals of Pro Stock Eliminator. Bob Glidden in the Ford in the far lane. Bruce Allen, the Chevy, in the near lane. A good start for Glidden. And Glidden extends his lead. It was from start to finish. The Ford of Bob Glidden, as the family celebrates. Bob Glidden has won his 61st national event title. His elapsed time, the quickest of the meet, 7.42 seconds. His speed, 188 miles an hour.
Bob Glidden moves first off the starting line and just keeps extending the lead and finally drives to daylight.
And that daylight gives Bob Glidden his 8th Spring Nationals title.
Low ET 742.
I thought it was really a good run, Steve. The car left the starting line perfectly. The track was a little better because it's cooler, and I'll tell you, we've had a lot of great wins, but believe me, this is the best.
Our congratulations to Bob Glidden for his 2nd Spring Nationals title in a row. This man, John Force, has just been told his wife has gone to the hospital in California about to give birth to their 3rd child. Can you imagine the stress and mental pressure this puts on John Force in his final round race? Now let's go to Don Garland's.
As we go into the Top Fuel final, it looked like Gene Snow owned this Columbus racetrack. But just moments ago, they tried to turn the engine over and it was locked up. Now, even if they get the engine fixed, it's my prediction that the crew will be so rattled and Gene Snow will be so upset over this terrible thing that's happened right in the last moments that Darrell Gwynn will have a definite advantage. With the expertise of Jerry Gwynn tuning this car to get it down that near lane that has given us trouble all day long today.
Now it's time for the finals in Funny Car Eliminator. John Force in the near lane. The choice went to Bruce Larson. He selected the far lane of the track. And Larson loses traction. John Force streaks across the finish line, his 2nd national event victory. He was able to concentrate on driving this race car, though you know his thoughts have got to be with his wife in the hospital in California.
Look at that beautiful clutch dust come out of that car. No tire smoke. I told John to rely on the judgment of his crew chief, Austin Coyle. He did, and it paid off.
John Force's first win came at last season's Grand Nationals. It was not televised, and that's preyed on his mind ever since.
Well, anyone who has seen John Force before on our Diamond P Sports telecast knows that this won't be an interview. This will be a one-man show. Congratulations, John.
Is that good?
Oh, perfect. Everybody expected you to smoke the tires. It was the other way around.
Diamond P wasn't there at Montreal. They're finally here, thank God. Somebody's here to save me.
That's right.
It's really amazing. Driving these race cars is something, and I did the dry, and Coyle looked in and said, "We're in trouble, buddy, and all that's left is the dashboard." Can you believe planning on a dashboard to win a race, and I flipped a few buttons, and that old heap worked? I can't believe it.
And this Oscar is going to be in California in a maternity ward by, I'd say, tomorrow afternoon.
I'm leaving right now. I mean, like they're trying to get me something. Yeah, 6 o'clock, my wife, we're trying to induce labor right now. She's overdue, and I got to get home since I hugged this crew. She wants to name him Oscar, but I ain't doing it if I won. Now
She, Oscar?
No. He or she, whatever. She said, if you win, we'll call it Oscar or Colombo.
When did it finally set in on you? Somewhere down the racetrack that you'd won this thing?
Don Gartlett's come over, had a long old talk with me about lanes and looking at them, and everyone says they're bad, but that don't mean they're bad. Go by what your crew chief says. Coyle walked back and said, it's good. And when I pulled up there, he said, after the drive, you don't look so good, but we went with the game plan. It worked.
Get to California, will you? My best to your family.
Get to the California, and I couldn't have been here in Columbus without all my sponsors, Castrol, Jolly Rancher, the whole bunch of them. Thank you, guys.
John Force, what an act.
And Steve, take a look at this. Gene Snow has come up with something new. It's a rolling pit area. They have that engine back together. It will be a race for the Top Fuel Championship. Come on, keep moving. One race remains, and this is a man very lucky to be here. Gene Snow's engine is running, and Don Garland's, it sounds fine.
Yes, it does, and it's a real tribute to the crew and all the people that helped him. I wouldn't have bet money on it, I'll tell you.
Racing against Snow is Darrell Gwynn. He could have forced the issue, but he told the NHRA officials if it's just a few minutes, let Snow have it, and let's give this huge crowd a race for the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator. Gwynn in the near lane, Snow in the far lane.
I wonder what must be going through Snow's mind right now with all the work that's been done on that engine. He must be wondering, is the thing going to really do it or not?
And it does it too well. He smokes the tires at the starting line, and Darrell Gwynn wins the race. He loses a tire. The left rear tire is gone off of Darrell Gwynn's car. It is listing, but he has got the car under control and brings it to a stop. Darrell Gwynn wins his third national event in a row. As he gets out of the race car, he is going to be confronted with a shocking sight. A bare wheel resting against the pavement. A tremendous driving job by Darrell Gwynn. Let's look again.
Darrell gets the starting line advantage, not to be denied. While the guys over on Gene Snow team obviously made too much power for the run. Darrell comes down the course by himself, and just as he goes into the finish line, a tremendous explosion. The tire comes off the car, and look at Darrell holding onto that car to try to make it go straight. It wants to drive over to one side. I've made hundreds of runs in these cars and seen thousands. I've never seen anything like this before.
What a driving job by Gwynn. Steve?
If at all possible, let's try to put that behind you. That's 3 in a row. Our congratulations on that and on your sportsmanship in not forcing the issue with Gene Snow. You wanted to race.
That's right. I wanted to beat him fair and square, and I didn't necessarily want this to happen, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, guaranteed.
And with $30,000 on the line here and points that could ultimately be worth $150,000, that's more than sportsmanship. That's a real desire to compete.
That's right. We talked about it, and there's enough money at stake and enough points and corporate people involved here that we wanted to just race, but at the same time, we wanted Gene to be just beside us.
Well, I'll tell you what, you gave us all a thrill and a fright down at the finish line again. What great driving.
Thank you very much.
Darrell Gwynn, subdued, as you might imagine.
Our congratulations to all the Spring Nationals champions. For Don Garlitz and Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Columbus. The executive producer of Diamond P Sports is Harvey M. Ballish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. The 1988 Budweiser Spring Nationals have been brought to you by Motorcraft. Get the peace of mind of doing it right with the right parts. Motorcraft quality parts. And by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. And by Castrol, the motor oil engineered for today's smaller car. Coverage of the 1988 NHRA Spring Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports.